Ephphatha, be opened. A powerful word. While getting a checkup, a man tells his doctor that he thinks his wife is losing her hearing. The doctor says, you should do a simple test. Stand about 15, 20 feet behind your wife and say, honey, move 3 feet closer and do it again. Keep moving 3 feet closer until she responds. Remember how close you were when she gives you an answer. That will help me to know how bad her hearing loss is. About a month later, the same guy is at the doctor's again, and the doctor asks, well, did you do that experiment with your wife's hearing? The man said, yes. Well, how close did you get before she answered? Well, by the time I got about 3 feet away, she turned around and said, for the 5th time, what? The husband thought his wife was deaf. So a physical healing obviously shows the authority of Jesus, the power of Jesus, but it also becomes a metaphor for spiritual healing. So physical deafness then is a metaphor for spiritual deafness. How many times, I wonder, have we felt that God was deaf to our prayers, that our cries went unanswered? But who was the deaf one? Was it God, or was it us? One sign, I think, of spiritual deafness is that we talk at one another, not really open to what the other is saying. So there's a spiritual deafness. One thing that strikes me, I've noticed, is that spiritual deafness can pervade whole groups of people. You'd think that corporately, at least some of us would hear. But whole groups of people, I think, show signs of spiritual deafness. In Germany in the 1930s, millions listened to Hitler. And Hitler gave them an outlet for their anger and their fear. And made them deaf and blind to an alternate reality from the one they were led to believe. It was so hard for me to grasp that. How was it possible that one man like Hitler could deceive an entire nation? How was it possible that they remained deaf to anything else but what he said? Is it possible? Is it possible today that by fixating on the voices of political leaders and by allowing them to stir up our anger or fear, that we become deaf to the voice of God? Is it possible that that could happen today? That by allowing our fears and anger to be stirred up, that we become deaf to the voice of God? A deafness to the voice of God ruptures our communion with God and even creates a barrier to our communication, to our communicating with others. Now, communication and communion have the same root word. In order to be in communion, we have to permit communication. There has to be something that moves back and forth, that there's a certain receptivity, that there's a certain openness. And God uses the communion that we have with Him to enable us to communicate with one another, so that in that communication we might find communion with one another in God. Can we hear Jesus calling out to us? When I was in Center City working with the Bethesda Project, I was at 16th and Walnut Streets. And it was a crowded, busy day, and there were all kinds of people walking on the street. And it was noisy. It was the traffic and people. And as I'm walking by, I heard very, very, very faintly, "I'm hungry. I'm hungry." I don't know if you could hear that. "I'm hungry." Could barely hear it. And then I looked, turned around, and there was a young man sitting on the sidewalk. Dozens and dozens of people walking by, ignoring him. And he's saying in a very soft voice, "I'm hungry." So I stopped and I said to him, "Would you like something to eat?" "Yes." So there was a Subway sandwich shop near where we were. So I took him in there and said, "Order whatever you like." But the thing is, I'm even surprised that I heard it, because it was so soft. And I wonder if in our lives, the cry of God and the voices of the poor are so soft that we barely hear them. Maybe we don't hear them, or maybe we hear them and ignore them. Have we become deaf to God's voice calling out to us day by day? Jesus spoke clearly in Matthew 25. He spoke clearly. "When I was hungry, you gave me to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was an alien and a stranger, you welcomed me." When did we do that, Lord? When you did it to the least of these, you did it to me. And then he said to the goats on the left, "When I was hungry, you did not feed me. When I was an alien, a stranger, you did not welcome me." When did we not welcome you? When you did not welcome the least of these, you did not welcome me. God's voice was clear, is clear. And yet, I don't think we are attentive to that voice. I think it was within the past week, Pope Francis said, working to turn migrants away from the prospect of peace and security in a new country is a grave sin. Working to turn migrants away from the prospect of peace and security in a new country is a grave sin. Well, maybe that's Pope Francis. What does he know? St. John Paul II said, "Man has the right to leave his native land for various motives, and also the right to return in order to seek better conditions of life in another country. We must live in solidarity and take responsibility for those in trouble. Pope Francis, Pope John Paul II, really echoing Matthew 25. When I was a stranger, an alien, you welcomed me. Well, we might say, but they're illegals. Do we dismiss our responsibilities to them simply because we label them illegals? Does that dismiss us of our responsibility? Illegal, huh? You know that Bishop Angelo Roncalli, right around the time of World War II, in Eastern Europe, did something illegal. He did something fraudulent. He issued tens of thousands of fraudulent baptismal certificates to the Jews of that area. But in doing so, he saved tens of thousands of lives from the Holocaust. So he did something illegal. But what he did was moral. And the question is, do we allow ourselves to hear the gospel through the filter of, let's say, political figures? Or do we allow us to listen to the voice of political figures through the gospel? Which has the priority? St. Augustine says in a beautiful passage in the Confessions that he struggled to hear God's voice. He spoke of his spiritual deafness and how God broke through, and it took a long time. This is what St. Augustine says. Late have I loved you, O beauty ever ancient, ever new. Late have I loved you. You were within me, but I was outside. And it was there that I searched for you. In my unloveliness, I plunged into the lovely things which you created. You were with me, but I was not with you. You called, you shouted, and you broke through my deafness. You flashed, you shone, and you dispelled my blindness. You breathed your fragrance on me. I drew in breath, and now I pant for you. I have tasted you. Now I hunger and thirst for more. You touched me, and I burned for your peace. Once we have heard the voice of God, all other voices take second, third, or fourth place. All other voices. We come to Mass to listen more attentively to the voice of God, to have God's voice break through our deafness. To let that happen, we have to consciously and continuously desire to and choose to listen for God's voice by choosing to reject contrary human voices. Jesus said, "Ephphatha," to the deaf man, "be open." May he say the same healing word to the people of our nation, that we may be healed of our deafness, which is the source of our division. O God, come, Speak your word of healing to us. Ephrathah, be open.